Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad that I can join you and glad that you could join me. I obviously wish that we could be face-to-face and person-to-person rather than doing this communication virtually, but as I say sometimes, a little bit is better than nada. I'm speaking with you from the dining room at the President's Residence. This is student art behind me that I know some of you have seen before. I've been working at home virtually since mid-March. Finding that to be a new and interesting experience that is a little trying, but we're still moving the college along, and overall things are going very well. I always think that communication and information sharing is important even in the best of times, certainly at a time like this where the world around us is crazy, both because of the coronavirus, the racial dynamics that have exploded in America recently have everyone on edge, anxious about the future, anxious and uncertain and scared and angry about their own lives. And so this is a time in particular that I think it's especially important for us to gather, share information, for me to respond to questions that you may have and comments. And so we'll speak here for about 45 minutes, and questions are coming in on my phone that I'll respond to. I will share that my little friend Hans, the dachshund, is here with me. I know many of you have met Hans before on events like this, and he's quite the lap dog, and so he'll be here at least for a while, as long as I can stand him on my lap. And now I've lost my questions. Here's a question. How did the virtual commencement go? How many people participated? And will there be an in-person commencement for the class of 2020? One of the hardest things that I had to decide early on in our coronavirus adjustments was to postpone the May 2020 commencement. It was clear that it could not happen in any way consistent with guidelines for social distancing and crowd size. We had over 1,000 students register to take part in the virtual commencement. We thought it was really well done, well organized, and we've gotten some great feedback. It's quite clear that it's a virtual commencement is not going to replace the real thing, but I found it quite compelling. Some of our staff put together just a marvelous collage of imagery of life on campus that I think for our participating graduates and their families probably felt a little bit like a walk down memory lane of their time here at SUNY New Paltz. We had a number of speakers. Our valedictorian spoke. We had a first world, the student organizer of our first world commencement spoke about the special meaning of first world commencement. One of our alums gave a brief and very engaging welcome for students. We're planning a live commencement ceremony for the fall, the 2020 graduates in the spring of 2021. We'll keep people posted on what that event will look like, and we certainly will welcome people back to campus at the time. Here's another question. There was a big push for money for the Student Crisis Fund. How many students have been helped? The answer to that is that last month alone, we funded around $25,000 to 30 students. We've heard such compelling stories about what a difference fairly modest amounts of money, $1,000 here, $1,000 there, can make in the ability of students to remain in school, in some instances to graduate. We're continuing that effort. The SUNY system organized a matching program through a major private donation that will match up to $50,000 of campus-generated funding. So we have reached the point now where we will qualify for that $50,000 match from SUNY system, and that will make a huge difference in the lives of more of our students. Here's a question. Curious about how students can access the job placement info remotely. Now that they've graduated, how are they supported in finding work in this new difficult time? I encourage, if you're a recent graduate who maybe forwarded that message, I encourage you to be in touch with our Career Resource Center. They're organizing a number of virtual events and training sessions and virtual ways to connect students with potential employers. So a lot of interest, a lot of support there, and I sure encourage you to reach out. Here's a question. What is our community planning to differently address the demands of the Black Lives Matter movement? I will share that a group of faculty, staff, and students organized earlier this year, before coronavirus, around the theme of, it's a national initiative called Black Lives Matter in School, and they've been working hard and diligently to plan curricular improvements, how we can speak and talk about race and the deeply embedded racism in America, what it means in the lives of people, what white people need to be thinking of to become allies, and to engage in those conversations so that we can begin to dismantle the racism that is so prevalent in American society. We're hearing from a lot of students, including students of color from communities that have been hit especially hard by the coronavirus pandemic, that the recent developments surrounding police racial violence in America, and the continuing emergence of white supremacist movements in America, what all of those things have meant for our students. We're working on ways that we can develop programming in the fall to continue addressing those matters. We clearly pay attention to symbolic ways that we can address race and racism in America. The efforts that this campus undertook in the last 2 years to rename several buildings on campus that had clear ties to slavery, Northern slavery, were symbolic, but we need to be doing more, and we clearly recognize that. The Black Lives Matter in School initiative is continuing virtually. They've been doing lots of programming, lots of processing, developing approaches that we can better support each other, and particularly our students of color at this difficult time. The administration has reached out to that group, committing our support to help move that effort along, at the same time expressing our gratitude for the grassroots effort that program represents. Here's a question. Would you consider having a live in-person graduation ceremony in the fall? We're so uncertain right now about what the fall will look like, in bringing large numbers of people to campus for a live virtual commencement right now is potentially problematic. I'm sorry, a live on-campus face-to-face commencement in the fall is potentially problematic, and so that's why we've not taken that step. Will tuition change this next year, 2020-21? The campus does not set tuition. Tuition is set by the Board of Trustees, and I don't know if that decision for the coming year has been finalized. I know that one of the topics of discussion was to hold tuition flat for the fall semester, but implement a tuition increase during the spring. We'll keep you posted on that once that becomes clearer. Is there consideration of a statue of Sojourner Truth as part of a new contemplative space? As a matter of fact, we're working with a sculptor who is in the process of sculpting a statue of Sojourner Truth at age 29, which is the age that she was when she was emancipated. Right now, we're thinking that the most appropriate place to put that statue when it's completed will be in the concourse outside the Sojourner Truth Library. We're very excited about that proposal. We're trying to raise the funds needed to bring that to completion, but indeed we are working on that. Who do we contact if our dining refund is incorrect? I'll say this, that the folks who calculated those dining refunds have recognized that they made a mistake. They've corrected that, and I believe they're issuing all of the additional checks that need to come out to correct that. So maybe my best advice for you is to sit tight for a while. If you don't see that second check come, then reach out again. Here's a question: how much money did New Paltz, I assume, receive for the CARES Act? This is the federal coronavirus stimulus funding, and New Paltz received about $6.5 million. Will receive about $6.5 million in CARES funding. Half of that, about $3.27 or $3.28 million, is specifically dedicated to reimburse students who incurred costs or lost funds directly because of the coronavirus. Just in the last few days, we've gotten the go-ahead from SUNY to proceed with processing those awards, and so that's all in process. You should, if you're a student at New Paltz, current student, or a student this spring, you should have received notification of the process for applying for those funds. When will incoming freshmen be notified on the plan for an on-campus fall semester? That's a really complicated one for me to answer. And the clearest response is that we have been planning for multiple scenarios because we don't know what the guidance will be from New York State, what the path of the pandemic will be. We are hoping that we can offer a mix of on-campus and virtual courses, that we can have students living in the residence halls, obviously with personal protection equipment, with safe social distancing, with different protocols in place for maintaining safety. We're planning how we can, if we are able to offer courses on campus, how we can relocate them in classes where we can maintain safe social distancing, which obviously will mean reduced density and numbers of students in some of our classes. So this is a plan in progress. I'm getting out a communication shortly to both current students and that is returning students and new accepted students, so that you understand some of the processes that we've been going through to plan. We're hoping that we can get the guidance from SUNY and from New York State so that we can share with you a clear path of where we hope to head. When will incoming freshmen hear about orientation? We're actually working on a virtual orientation. It will be available in different modules throughout the summer. I'm going on campus on Monday to record my welcome for new first-year students, new transfer students, international students. So stay tuned. You'll be hearing information about when that will become available in the very near future. How is the college supporting the staff who can't work on campus? We have had just remarkable success with maintaining campus operations with staff and faculty working remotely. Lots of offices have staff who are conducting the work of their office in the business of the college from home. Some come onto campus on occasion, typically as an individual, exercising great personal protection, wearing a face mask, using wipes to handle doorknobs and elevator buttons. Sometimes they'll be the only person working in their office on a particular day. someone else will come in another day. Sometimes there will be um, two staff members working in an office in different parts of the office so that they're not in contact with each other. And we're also in the process as a part of our planning of determining the needs that we have for personal protection, including face masks, face shields, depending on where a person is working. The partitions that many of you no doubt have been seeing in stores and shops for the kinds of offices that where a staff member will engage directly in contact with a student or with members of the public. So we're working very hard both to protect those employees who are working on campus now and those who what we will face as the fall comes along. How has the dining hall practiced social distance? Well, we have all of our meals delivered to students living in the residence halls during the spring were takeout, no in dining in place during that wrap up of the spring semester. Sodexo, our food service, has been working on a number of different plans and approaches that we can employ in the fall, depending on what the Ulster County and the New York State health guidelines are for food service at that time. Here's a question: what will happen with reunion in the fall? And the answer to that is that we will have some activities during reunion weekend. We're not yet sure because of the uncertainty about the fall semester if they will be virtual or if they will be a combination of in-person and virtual offerings. We're working on, our staff are working on what alumni reunion might look like. Obviously, that would be another example of the kind of programming that we have to do consistent with New York State and health department guidelines for a crowd size, for social distancing. So that's the kind of planning that we have in place now. Um, here's a question similar to what I responded to a few minutes ago. In light of the death of George Floyd and protests since, what is SUNY New Paltz doing to combat racism and promote social justice both on campus and in the world at large? The Black Lives Matter initiative that I mentioned is one step that we're taking, programming that we're planning for the fall, ways that we can better support students who come back to campus traumatized by the events and happenings in the world around us. Some of you are aware that we have introduced employee training on multicultural awareness, being aware of implicit bias in all of our actions. We all carry these biases with us. We need to be aware of them, aware of how they influence the judgments that we make about other people, and how we can be better attuned to managing those implicit biases, and how we can engage in conversations about race and racism that are productive, that educate all of us, that help us all understand the issues at hand, and how we as an institution can begin to address them. We obviously pay closest attention and have the most ability to influence what happens on our campus, but we're also engaged throughout the community. Our students, student clubs and organizations work with individuals, with nonprofits, with others throughout the Hudson Valley region, and we believe we can influence the broader regional conversation as well. Any plans to shift start-in dates for fall like Notre Dame and other schools to keep kids on campus for the full semester and home for all holidays. Actually, I think the plan that Notre Dame and a number of other institutions have in place is to cancel fall breaks, to have classes on what otherwise might be holidays, so that all instruction can end and students can go home before Thanksgiving and not come back. There are some assessments that there may be an uptick in coronavirus cases sometime during the fall. And so the impetus there is to reduce travel frequency between campus and other communities where students may come back to campus after a 4 or 5 day weekend and carrying the virus and infect others. We're looking as part of our planning for different scenarios. We're looking at what that might look like for us, how we would make that work. But there's nothing definite in that part of our planning yet. Some campuses are allowing for all single dorms in the fall. Can New Paltz handle something like this? I think the straight answer to that is no. We have the fewest residence hall beds per 100 students of any of the SUNY comprehensive campuses. So we simply do not have excess residence hall capacity to accommodate single rooms only. We are seeing some guidance and some guidelines from CDC and practices that are being discussed at other campuses of creating safe, socially distanced double occupancy residence halls, and that's a plan that we're reviewing as well as part of our planning for the fall semester. Have you considered having students quarantine themselves before the start of classes? Actually, we have been discussing a number of options around that realm. We're setting aside one residence hall this fall that will be used solely for quarantining and isolation, so that if we have a student become symptomatic on campus during the fall, they can be moved immediately into an isolation space. They'd have a single room with a microwave, a refrigerator. We have protocols to deliver food to those students, handle laundry, and we would also test those students immediately. And if they test negative, perhaps we would retest again because of the false negatives on some of the tests. But we're working actively on developing those kind of protocols as well. What will be the impact for SUNY New Paltz of the SUNY Chancellor's recent resignation? Some of you may have heard or read the news that Chancellor Christina Johnson has accepted the presidency at The Ohio State University. She has close family ties to Ohio, has commented to presidents and others that as she has watched us work on our campuses, she recognizes what she missed being in a SUNY system role and really was missing that opportunity to engage with students and faculty and programs on a college campus. There's a great executive leadership team at SUNY. Processes are well in place to provide us with the guidance that we need for planning our campus operations during the fall semester. So obviously the Chancellor will be missed greatly. She's made a number of wonderful strides for the campus in private fundraising, in partnerships across the campus. She's been a great support to me, and I will miss working with her a lot, but we're confident that we can keep the ship afloat and moving ahead through these stormy waters. Here's a question. There was a big push for money for the Student Crisis Fund. This is different than the Crossing the Finishing Line Fund. How many students have been helped? The Student Crisis Fund has assisted 35 students with a total of almost $28,000. Again, a big impact. Here's a question. Will students need to wear their masks at all times in the classrooms and dorms? We're still developing those protocols. Most campuses that are planning on-campus face-to-face instruction are doing so with the expectations that professors, students will wear face masks in classes. Professors may work behind plexiglass shields. Uh, Again, protocols still being developed. Some campuses are also developing protocols that while a student in their residence hall room might not have a face mask on, when they leave to walk down the hallway to go to classes or to go to the cafeteria, they would be expected to put a face mask on. This is a great question. What if a student has autoimmune issues? Can they opt to take their classes online? Absolutely. And it's one of the reasons that we're planning, in our current planning, a mix of on-campus and face-to-face in remote courses. We know that there's a great desire on the part of students and parents to have students back on campus. We want that as well. We also recognize that there are some students who have health issues that leave them immunocompromised in the case of in the case of coronavirus, and we want to protect the health and safety of students and employees first and foremost. That's our top goal. We also are aware that we have a number of faculty who have health issues that may make them particularly susceptible to coronavirus, or they may have family members who, because of age or health conditions, are also perhaps particularly vulnerable to coronavirus. And so we want to create opportunities for those faculty who need to be able to teach remotely as well. Here's a question. Will each residence hall be deep cleaned before the fall semester? Yes, our custodial crews have been deeply focused on learning all the protocols and preparing for deep cleaning. There's different guidelines on cleaning relative to surface contact. So most of the and growing body of evidence that it's very difficult to contact coronavirus by picking it up off of a surface. So there's some skepticism that deep cleaning maybe has a lot of positive impact, but we certainly will be doing that. We think the more important pieces are the social distancing, the use of personal protection, good respiratory hygiene, being careful how you manage a sneeze, frequent hand cleaning, particularly after touching surfaces. Those are all the things that we think are very important. Question here, will field classes or labs be open in the fall? Actually, in part of our scenario planning, one of the options that we're looking at is to put priority for fall semester live courses on campus in several areas, if we are able to offer live courses on campus consistent with state health guidelines. But our priorities would be lab courses, at least for those selected lab courses, for those that can't be done very well remotely. We would look at studio courses in the arts. We want to have a rich array of courses for first-year students so that they can be introduced to a much more normal college experience. We're also looking at some of the courses and experiences that are required for licensure or accreditation. And we also are looking at particular courses in majors that majors may need to progress towards graduation. So those are our priorities. Here's a question. If students would like to take a gap year, would they have to apply again? I'm going to have to get an answer on that one. That one's not clear to me. we, we are aware, and I talk sometimes with students about being aware of the risk of taking a year off. We're, I think we all need to be concerned about whether a student taking a year off rather than returning or taking a gap year would have life events occur during that time away that would interfere with their ability to continue their education. So I can find that answer to the question about needing to reapply and share that with you. Here's a question: what's the status of the Soaring Higher campaign? This is the college's fundraising campaign that has a target of raising $23 million. And the answer is that we've now raised more than $21.5 million towards that $23 million goal. We have only about $1.5 million left to raise. The New Paltz community continues to be amazingly generous and supportive of the college and our students through that campaign. So all gifts that you make now count towards that campaign. And we're just so grateful to all of you who have supported the campaign and our other fundraising efforts. Will the gym reopen in the fall? Again, we just don't know. We're hoping so. That would be one that we would follow in some respects the state health department guidelines for gyms and athletic facilities. We would want to be sure that we protect human health and safety. There again, this is one area where surface contact may be a particular concern around aerobic equipment, weights, and so on. So that's one that we're still looking at in our planning as well. Here's one: are you looking at using HEPA filters and UV lights into the air conditioning systems? Most air is recycled in building AC systems. There's a lot of skepticism about the impact of UV light on coronavirus. Not my area of expertise. I can sure check on the question about HEPA filters in our AC system. I don't know whether that's technically feasible or not. I will certainly raise that question. Did leftover dining dollars get carried over to the fall semester? No, you should have been refunded for those. That's the comment that I was making earlier, that there was a miscalculation, and those have been, any funds that were not included in the initial refund check have been recalculated and should be coming out shortly. These are great questions. I appreciate your interest in your joining us here today. Great question here as well. Will there be more days to move in so there's not too much crowding? Yeah, that's a piece that we're working on as well. The residence life staff and student affairs staff are working carefully on how we can stage that move in, whether it's by schedule, whether we have students move in waves, how we can build the kind of support that we need so that we don't have tons of family members potentially coming onto campus affecting other students. Those are certainly part of our plans. I wonder if I have any other questions here that came up. Are there classes this summer, and will New Paltz be open for in-person classes this fall? We have lots of classes this summer. As in previous summers, recently we've been offering them online. Most previous summers last year, most of our courses were online. This summer, all of our courses are online. And our enrollments are pretty close this year to what they were last year. So a good rich summer offering clearly in place. And again, for the fall, we're still in the middle of our planning in awaiting SUNY and New York State guidance. I'm setting my little dog Hans down. He gets to be a burden on my lap after a while. How is your dog Hans enjoying having you home? Hans has gotten so spoiled having dad home and other family members around. So he's doing well. He's living the life of Riley with remote work. Oh, what is the artwork behind me on the wall? I should have mentioned that this is art by SUNY New Paltz students. We have a long-standing practice, my wife and I, of rotating student art through the public areas of the house. This is where we often entertain donors and speakers and other visitors to the campus. And we appreciate this opportunity to show off the great talents of our students. And I'm always happy to brag about what wonderful students we have at New Paltz. And this is I can't even tell you the classes that these are from, but sometimes we have wonderful art in the dining room and other parts of the house that is done in foundations course. So these are not necessarily senior students in art majors. Here's another great question. What actions has New Paltz taken to better position the campus police force for their work? Just the other day, I filled in and I watched a training video that is reflective of the kind of training that our University Police Department officers undertake regularly. This was a wonderful program on implicit bias. And I commented earlier about our implicit biases and how we need to be aware of these. And this is a training for university police officers to be aware of their biases and how they play out in police work. And our officers have responded very, very positively to that work, embraced that. They have a difficult job because our university police officers recognize that they have to be in a position to do anything and take any action that a regular municipal police officer would need to take. But they're also educators. They're working in a college campus environment. They're working with a special population, and we're proud of the work that our university police do. They're always eager for more training, and training and education is a key part of the kind of the culture of our university police department. Oh, here's a question. Will there be theater productions in the fall? I think the theater department is talking about ways that they can, as other departments are, ways that they can undertake virtual or low density programming. I don't know where that planning is. I know that our theater program is so well regarded both on the campus and in the community. So we're hoping that will be able to happen, but I can't give any great detail of how that will work. Has there been SUNY funding cut? Will there be GA and TA, that is graduate assistant and teaching assistant programs, positions still? Our funding has not been cut yet. We're concerned that it will be, but certainly our planning for the current fall semester is that we will have TAs, we will have graduate assistants. Whether we have students on learning in-person, face-to-face courses on campus or learning remotely, there will be a key need for tutors, for teaching assistants, and so we're anticipating that those positions certainly will be available and prevalent. Here's a question: Will there be fall sports, or will all fall sports move to spring 2021? This is a big conversation both in the SUNY Athletic Conference. Amanda, is this screen showing up? Okay, thanks. Big question in the SUNY Athletic Conference and in the National Collegiate Athletic Association about fall sports. Not at all clear what will happen there. I think that if we're not able to have fall sports during the fall, it's probably unlikely that they would move to the spring semester and function along with typical spring sports. But that's also uncertain. Lots of planning going on there as well. Oh, this is very great. Here's a message from a student. I still have 2 paintings hanging in your house. I hope you're enjoying them. We absolutely are. Here's another feedback from a student. Your response has been amazing thus far. I've benefited from an emergency financial stipend, and I'm so thankful. Thank you for that feedback. We're glad that we could provide that support and help you continue your operations. If school opens in person in the fall, how much say does the individual professor have to switch their classes to online? That's also a topic that we're discussing of how we best manage that. As I indicated, we certainly want to respect the health concerns that faculty may have. At the same time, we're hoping that we will have sufficient number of faculty who want that experience of being present in a classroom with students, even if it's under different circumstances, to have that. So this will be a negotiation and I'm sure some compromise. Here's another great question. If there's a return to campus in the fall, will the college provide PPE, that is personal protective equipment, and have hand sanitizer stations set up? In fact, we're looking at purchasing another, I don't recall the figure, for some reason, another 40 to 50 Purell stations to have in key locations on campus. We're also putting together the requisition that we have to provide face masks, probably washable face masks for students and for faculty. We're also planning face shields for employees in particular circumstances where they may need that special protection. Any summer virtual internships for engineering students? That's a good question. Let me reach out to the Dean of Science and Engineering and Career Resource Center and see what their what may be available. If you'd like to drop me an email, president@newpaltz.edu, we can follow up with a question there. Let me see if there's any questions that came in earlier. How can we help the college now in the current moment? Certainly philanthropically, contributing as you can to our student crisis fund or our scholarship funds that support students. As I shared in a previous conversation, I know that a lot of our students are seeking guidance, particularly some of our graduates, but also students seeking guidance on career preparation. And if you want to connect with our alumni office, they can connect you with students who may be seeking that kind of input. We're also, our finances took a hit this spring because of lost revenue from the coronavirus and because of the hit of some of the expenses that we incurred managing the pandemic. Clearly reaching out to elected officials to convey your support for public higher education in New York and your support for federal support dedicated to higher education will mean a lot for us. Do students have a choice to stay on campus or do classes remotely? Not sure quite what that means. One scenario would be that a student living in the residence hall could take some classes face-to-face on campus, but also be taking other classes online or remotely. There may be students living in apartments in the community who would come onto campus to take a course or several courses, but also be taking a course online as well. So that's one of the scenarios that we could readily envision happening during the fall. Again, all of these are plans that are part of the scenarios that we're working on, and none of that is definite yet. We will get word out to current and to returning and new students as soon as we can. And I see we have hit our 45-minute mark, so I'm going to sign off. I will thank all of you for joining us and wish you well. Be safe, continue to practice safe social distancing, and hope to see as many of you as we can back on the campus in the fall. Take care and be well.